This video is brought to you by Brutus literally T-posing. After the events of Zetsubou no Shima, Primus travels to Alcatraz, goes to the lab, gets the blood vials respectively for Tank, Nikolai, and Takio, and travels back to Zetsubou and goes on to complete the cycle with Gorod Krovi in Revelations. But not this time. Hi guys, it's at the moment Tony, and today I'm finally talking about Blood of the Dead. Now, for those of you expecting this video, and were waiting for me to talk about it, yes, it's late, but I did that on purpose. I wanted to wait some time after the release of the intro cutscene so that we can process all the information, see what everybody has to say about it, and really just analyze this cutscene rather than me just doing a reaction just like any other YouTuber where I go, wow, oh my god, this is crazy. Because yeah, it is crazy. But I wanted to talk more about the story implications for this map, and now what we know and how to identify certain things and what it could possibly mean for our characters. Now, for those aware, we got the Zombies Chronicles timeline a few months back, and in this we see exactly how the cycle works. We see how it works with the BO1 characters, how it works with the BO2 characters, and then how it works with the BO3 characters, and how all these things coincide with things happening before, after, in between, etc. And this is the way things are set in stone, this is the way things are supposed to be, and we clearly see a few different signals of this not being the case, meaning that the cycle is officially broken from this point. Whether this just be a fracture and things will get resolved, the universe will end and start over to complete the cycle, or if this is completely deviating from the cycle and destroying its existence. So let's get into the identifying factors that show that the cycle is messed up. So obviously we know that this definitely takes place between Zetsubou and Gorod Krovi. We see the crew appear, and we see some dialogue exchange between Takio and Tank, the only two people who have lost their 1.0 selves at this point, as we haven't gone on to do Gorod Krovi and see Nikolai 1.0 die. So the importance between their conversation is obvious, as they're the only two out of the three who have lost their 1.0 selves. I mean, Richtofen's killed several different Richtofens at this point, so it's no big deal for him. But we see them appear, and they come out of the poster, and Richtofen then says, we should be closer to the lab. Now that's the first thing. They should be closer to the lab, because Richtofen clearly knows how the cycle goes and how things are supposed to go. We see that become evident later on. However, he says we should be closer, meaning something's off, for sure, because he would know. Okay, so they continue over to the lab, and the lab Richtofen says, you're late. And that's signal number 2, that he's late, and that's not the way it should be. Now, we don't know how late they are. They could be just a little bit late because they showed up at the wrong place and like further away. They could be minutes late because they teleported in at the wrong time. They could be hours late. Definitely not days late, I'm sure, but they could be hours late. We don't exactly know how late they are, but there's definitely something wrong. Now, something I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video is that this is based off of the comic. If you guys have seen the Call of Duty Zombies comic, we know how this interaction goes. The two doctors are happy to see each other. They get the blood vials. Tank goes up and looks at the cryogenically hardened Victus crew. They have their exchange, they leave. That's how it's supposed to go. In the timeline it says, and we've seen it happen in the comics. But we see that Lab Richtofen says that they're late, but the third indicator is that he's angry. Originally, the doctors are happy to see each other. So he's angry when he says, you're late, and they do their doctor-doctor exchange, and, you know, he says, 2 blood vials for each of them. Yeah, you know, which is the indicator saying that Richtofen knows how the cycle goes. He knows what's supposed to happen. He knows that they're supposed to get the blood vials there. He's clearly aware. Now here's where things get really interesting. Then Lab Richtofen says so much to do, a vessel from Axis, the opening of the gateways, and Zetsubou Richtofen says, are you sure you're not getting confused? Now that dialogue has now been in 3 games in a row. with the first map seeing Primus in it. And it's due to element 115 exposure. It messes with the mind, causes delusions, and we know this for a fact. And we've seen this happen to Richtofen at the beginning of The Giant, and he says it often during Origins, and things are clearly wrong. When he says that, we see Nikolai go up to the Victus crew, which is another indicator that something is wrong, because originally Tank goes up to them. So Nikolai surveys this and is like, okay, what is going on? Clearly you can tell by his face when he sees Misty. And then Lad Richtofen says to Zetsubou Richtofen, "You'll be needing this," and hands him the Chronorium. We know at this point that the Zetsubou Richtofen that we saw teleport with the group has already read the Chronorium. We know this for a fact. The timeline says it so. The fact that he knows these things, and he's signed at the bottom, and clearly he states it that he's already read it. He says the Chronorium, but I've already read it. And Lad Richtofen says, "Read it again." This exchange was nowhere close to happening, so the fact that he gave him the Chronorium is another indicator. He goes to the Chronorium and he goes through several pages and say, these pages have changed. Now, for those unaware about the Chronorium, its contents change depending on the reader, depending on the person. And for Richtofen, it appears to always be the same, so any Richtofen from any universe, or any premise Richtofen from any universe, reads it and sees the same thing, or they're supposed to. And same thing if Tank were to pick it up, he would see the same thing as another premise Tank, and etc, etc. But the fact that the pages seem to have changed drastically, that is the biggest indicator showing that the cycle is messed up. Something wrong has happened, and why that is, we don't exactly know, but we'll find out in the map. There's some speculation I'm going to get into near the end of this video. And yeah, so he says, you know, our blood, my blood, you can't possibly believe I would let this happen. Meaning that something bad is foretold to happen to our crew. I think that it's going to end in them dying, having to sacrifice themselves, but we don't exactly know yet. But then there's the shrug. The shrug that Lad Richtofen gives Zetsubou Richtofen as he's walking away. And then, you know, Zetsubou Richtofen swears at him and throws the book. We see the timeline in there. We see it close. Now, I sat there and I looked at the picture of the timeline, compared it with our regular timeline. Nothing has changed from what we can see, because obviously we can't read it, but the shape hasn't changed. So we don't exactly know what has changed. I mean, there's more than one page, but we've only seen 2 pages of the Chronorium. That's the left and right side of the timeline. Clearly it's a big book, and if he's going through it and multiple things have changed, that is a very, very big indication that something is wrong. And then the final indication that something that shouldn't have occurred is occurring is the zombie outbreak. Now, the thing about Mob of the Dead, and for those who are unaware, Mob of the Dead does not take place in real life. Mob of the Dead takes place in Purgatory. Although Alcatraz is obviously a real place and where the prisoners were kept, the prisoners are dead, and they've been dead. But the reason that they're in Purgatory is to repent for their sins and to break the cycle that they're in, because Weasel and killing them and the Easter egg, and if you don't know about the Mob of the Dead Easter egg, I highly suggest that you go Google on what that's about or watch someone else's video, because that's another 10 minutes worth of explaining. But we know that the zombies are in Purgatory with the mobsters. The zombies do not come out in real Alcatraz, or they're not supposed to. So the question is, why are they there now if our characters are supposedly not in Purgatory, unless they are for some reason, or something even worse is going on? Now, a possible tie would be that Monty was in control of Purgatory, and he knows how that whole thing works, and he's disrupting the cycle because he's tired of this shit, and is like, yeah, by the way, here you go, have some zombies, and makes things abnormally crazy. Maybe he's caught on to how the cycle goes, and the fact that he keeps having the same thing happen over and over and over. Maybe it's the Shadow Man manipulating things, maybe it's a different Richtofen manipulating things. Either way, something has allowed for things to spiral out of control, as Brutus then severs the connection for a portal to get back to Zetsubou, allowing for the cycle to continue as normal, because we know for a fact that this does not happen in the original cycle. So this is a fracture. This is a thing where they go off the track. And how it'll be resolved, we can only know in the Easter egg. But there's the ways that we know for sure that something is clearly wrong. Now, what the Easter egg would be, I'm not sure. Obviously, they're trying to escape the island, which is the same point of the Easter egg before. They're trying to escape the island, is trying to break the cycle. But I'm not exactly sure how they can make an Easter egg for this map. I'm very curious as to how it'll go, because I'm assuming this will not be the last map that we see Primus in. I'd assume that there would have to be at least one more map that would really just wrap everything up, or a really, really long cutscene that shows like a different ending to Gorod Krovi and different ending to Revelations. However, I would prefer just one more map, maybe to just clean everything up. Because Craig Houston said this is the craziest story he's ever written, so something's gonna have to change here, whether it be the usage of Victus, which I'm sure will come into play, or it'll be a different sort of ending with Primus, because we still have a lot of questions from Revelations that aren't answered, and ciphers that are unsolved, and so much is going on. But honestly, this gets me very, very, very excited for the direction of this map. However, there's one thing I kind of want to pick apart, and that's the Lab Richtofen. Now, there's this theory going around that the Lab Richtofen is post-Revelations Richtofen, because, you know, there's the predestination paradox that was talked about, where you're predetermined to do one thing, and until that happens, you're stuck in the paradox. If you were to die before you were to complete the task that you are meant to complete, the universe restarts, and you do it. And then once you're done, then you're off the hook. You can die, you can do whatever you please, and you get free will. Something that has been talked about before, as Monty said that he's the creator of free will. So the question is, where does this leave us? In Revelations, did we fully complete 100% all of the cycle, meaning that this time around things are different? Because we know the cycle has been going on several times. Maybe only this time we fully completed it 100%. The full cycle has been finished, our whole purpose has been made, but it's still restarted, but now it doesn't need to go the way that it's supposed to, and only that Richtofen knows it. I mean, the Richtofen that's in the lab doesn't have the blood vials. And the original Richtofen, I believe in the comics that's there waiting in the lab, does have his blood vials. And even if he doesn't, it's a completely different tone and way that he's acting. So maybe this Richtofen came in and killed the original Lab Richtofen and took his place. If the cycle's broken, I mean, there's no point. Maybe he's trying to get rid of all of the Primus crew, and maybe that's the point. Because we know in the one Revelations cipher talks about maybe with us all gone, the world won't be as screwed or whatever, because we know that that's supposed to be an old version of Dempsey and a different ending of the cycle. And maybe that's the whole point of wrapping up BO4's Primus or Aether storyline, is getting rid of all the Primus characters as well as, you know, Monty and Shadowman. The only way for the kids to be safe, the universe to be safe, and Element 115 free is that Primus needs to go, and every version of them needs to go. Literally all of them. All of the characters, all of the versions of our characters need to be completely eradicated so that everything can go straight, and we need to take down Monty and Shadowman with them. Maybe that's the point. Also, this is very interesting for the Zetsubou Richtofen that we see come with our characters. He knows the way that the cycle is supposed to go, and he always has. The thing is, though, is that it's not going that way. And although he did read the pages of the Canorium saying things have changed, he only really looked at it for, you know, a few seconds, so one would be safe to assume that he doesn't exactly know how in specific everything has changed, but he just knows that things are different and something is different with the blood. So now, Richtofen is now, for the first time might I add, left in the dark as to what's to happen. He doesn't know what is supposed to happen from this point onward, because he knows how things are supposed to be and he expects it, and he knows it's exactly, you know, one way that's supposed to go, but he's left in the dark. So that means he's frustrated, I'm sure. He's going to be frustrated and irritated in the map, and he tends to normally end up getting like pretty irritated with these sorts of things. If you guys know the premise of Richtofen, he's going throughout his place, he's like, no, we need to get this and this and that. And he's kind of a whiny bitch sometimes. I mean, I'll be honest, but he doesn't know what's supposed to happen. He's left in the dark. He is the guy who is always prepared. He always has a plan, but now he can't. Unless he was to pick up the Chronorium during the Easter egg and fully understand what is supposed to occur. And this is also interesting for the other three, because we know that Der Eisendrache has already happened, so Tank 1.0 is dead. We know that Zetsubo is just finished. We just had 1.0 Takeo die. So those two characters are still like all whack after they just saw them previous selves die, as they were in GK and onwards. But Nikolai 1.0 isn't dead yet, and they know how the plan is supposed to go, is that they need to get rid of these guys. So what does that mean for how they're going to be feeling? That and the fact that this is completely different, and Richtofen's going to need to explain, hey, there's a cycle, this is all supposed to always go one way, but for some reason right now, it's not. That's going to be crazy. There's going to be some great dialogue in this map, I can already tell you that. But yeah, there's my little analysis on the Blood of the Dead intro cinematic. Now, I'm not going to talk about gameplay, because we didn't really get a gameplay trailer, just the intro cinematic. I have no idea exactly how this will play, other than the fact that we know that the map is 35% bigger, and we're getting mainly like the full island, and I'm really excited. So, if you guys did enjoy this bit of Blood of the Dead talk, make sure to leave a like, and comment, tell me what you guys are thinking, and I can't wait to see you guys in some other Black Ops 4 videos coming soon. This is Atsumomatoni, signing out. Peace.